She rinsed her rice until the water ran completely clear. Every single time, no matter how long it took. You watched her do it and thought nothing of it, maybe rolled your eyes a little, maybe assumed it was just an old habit that no longer made sense. It made complete sense. She was removing excess surface starch that causes rice to clump, turn gummy, and overcook. Professional chefs charge serious money to teach that exact technique in cooking classes today. That was not the only thing she knew. Number 20, turns leftover rice into a better dinner than the original. Number 4, carries a story. This list does not take lightly. What else did she know that we stopped listening to? Subscribe now, because this list is 25 answers. Number 25, rice and canned tomato soup, 1 pot. Pour a can of tomato soup over a cup of uncooked rice, add just enough water to cover everything, and let it simmer low until the rice absorbs every bit of that tomato broth and turns tender and slightly sweet. This was a Tuesday night dinner in kitchens across the rural South and Midwest for decades, the kind of meal that appeared without ceremony and disappeared without leftovers. Solo seniors cooking alone tonight need exactly this in their rotation. 1 pot, 1 can, almost no cleanup, and a result that tastes considerably more deliberate than its ingredients suggest. The rice takes on the color of the tomato as it cooks, turning a deep orange that smells warm and slightly sweet from the stove. Most people today would reach for a boxed rice mix, costing several times more for a nearly identical result. Number 24. Fried rice from last night's leftovers. Cold, leftover rice at least a day old is a better ingredient than fresh rice will ever be. The moisture has left it overnight, which means it fries properly instead of steaming into a sticky mess in the pan. Heat a little oil, crack in an egg, scramble it rough, add the cold rice straight from the container, press it flat against the hot pan, and let it sit. That is where the flavor comes from. The bottom layer crisps and turns golden and slightly nutty, while the top stays soft, 2 textures in one pan from last night's dinner. Zero waste viewers who hate throwing out a container of leftover rice need to know this one specifically. The rice that seemed like a sad leftover is actually the better version. It just needed one more night in a hot pan to prove it. Number 23. Rice and egg skillet, Southern style. Cooked rice warmed in a skillet with a spoonful of butter or bacon grease. 2 eggs cracked straight in and stirred through until just set, seasoned with salt and black pepper and nothing else. This was a breakfast that became a dinner. Whenever the week got tight, filling and cheap and fast enough to make in the time it took to get a frying pan hot. Cost-conscious viewers stretching a grocery budget across a long week will find this in their regular rotation within days of trying it once. The eggs turn silky as they cook into the warm rice, coating each grain just slightly, the whole skillet smelling of browned butter and something faintly savory. A brunch restaurant charges considerably more for a fancier version of almost exactly this, plated carefully, and called something with a French name. Number 22. Congee, the original sick day bowl. 1 cup of rice simmered in 4 cups of water or broth for 45 minutes until it breaks down into something thick, silky, and deeply comforting. Eaten plain or with a pinch of salt and a few drops of soy sauce if you had it. Congee was the original sick day bowl across Chinese-American households and communities from California to New York for generations. The dish that appeared whenever someone needed feeding without demanding anything in return. Nostalgic boomers who grew up in households that kept a pot of something like this simmering on the back burner understand immediately why this dish exists. The texture is almost liquid, warm, and enveloping in a way that plain broth alone never quite achieves. It cost almost nothing to make and asks nothing of the person eating it except a quiet place to sit. Number 21. Rice stretched with water and salt. Plain rice cooked in slightly more water than usual, so each grain swells fuller and the pot stretches further, seasoned with nothing but salt and maybe a splash of whatever fat was on hand. Working-class kitchens across this country used this trick constantly because adding an extra cup of water cost nothing and turned a pot that fed 4 into one that fed 6 without anyone at the table noticing the difference. The rice turned slightly softer than usual, each grain a little more yielding than a standard cook, which actually makes it more satisfying against a bowl of broth or beans. Most people today measure their rice and water precisely without ever questioning whether the ratio they learned was built for thrift or for taste. It was built for both, and your grandmother knew exactly what she was doing when she filled that pot. Number 20. Gullah Geechee red rice. Onion and tomato cooked down in a cast iron pan until the tomato breaks completely and darkens at the edges. Then raw rice stirred straight into that base and just enough water added to finish the cooking, the rice absorbing every bit of tomato and fat in the pan as it steams. This is Gullah Geechee red rice, a dish that has fed families along the South Carolina and Georgia coasts for generations. Built by communities who transformed the simplest ingredients into something with genuine depth and complexity. American diaspora viewers with roots in the Low Country recognize this dish the way they recognize the smell of a specific kitchen from childhood, completely and immediately. The color alone sets it apart, every grain stained deep red from the tomato cooked directly into it, rather than spooned over the top afterward. No sauce required. The rice already carries everything. Number 19. Rice pudding, no cream needed. Leftover cooked rice, a cup of milk, a spoonful of sugar, a pinch of nutmeg, simmered slowly on a low flame until the milk reduces and thickens around the rice into something creamy and slightly sweet. No cream, no eggs, no special equipment. Just patience and a low flame and whatever rice was left from dinner the night before. Sentimental grandchildren who remember a grandmother producing this from seemingly nothing on a weekday evening will recognize it immediately, the way the kitchen smells when the milk begins to reduce and the nutmeg blooms into the warm steam. A small container of store-bought rice pudding costs considerably more per serving and tastes flatter, processed and thin compared to the version made slowly from a pot of leftover rice that would otherwise have sat in the refrigerator until it got thrown away untouched. Rice is the single most consumed grain on Earth, and it has been the foundation of survival cooking across more American communities than almost any other ingredient. Gullah Geechee families built an entire cuisine around it on the Carolina coast. Japanese-American families at Manzanar cooked it on hot plates under detention. Sharecropper families across the Mississippi Delta stretched it across entire weeks. The United States Department of Agriculture recognized rice as the most cost-efficient calorie source available to low-income households as far back as the 1930s. That was math that grandmothers already knew. What did she know about this grain that nobody thought to write down? Subscribe now, because this list is the answer. Number 18. Rice and bacon grease, the forgotten side. A spoonful of saved bacon grease, melted in a pan before the rice goes in, coats every grain in a thin layer of smoky fat that changes the flavor of the entire pot without changing a single other ingredient. Working-class viewers who grew up in households where the bacon grease jars sat permanently beside the stove will recognize this immediately as the trick that made plain rice taste like it belonged next to something expensive. The fat carries a smokiness that seeps into the rice as it cooks, turning something plain into something that smells like a full breakfast, even when it is just a side dish. Most kitchens today reach for butter or oil without a second thought, never realizing the jar sitting beside the stove after Sunday breakfast was already doing a better job than either one. Number 17. Rice and canned beans. Complete protein. Equal portions of cooked rice and canned beans, warmed together in one pot and eaten as a complete meal without any meat required. Nutritionists later confirmed what every grandmother feeding a large family on a small budget already understood intuitively, that rice and beans together form a complete protein, delivering the same essential amino acids a piece of meat would provide at a fraction of the cost. Practical home cooks trying to reduce a weekly grocery bill without reducing the nutrition on the plate need to know this specifically because it changes how they think about building a meal. The beans soften slightly as they warm into the rice, their broth thickening the whole pot into something that feels more like a stew than a side dish. A plate of this costs almost nothing and feeds a person completely. Number 16. Rice water for bread and gravy. The starchy water left after boiling rice carries enough natural thickener to turn a thin pan gravy into something that coats a spoon properly, or to replace part of the liquid in a bread dough and give the loaf a softer crumb and a slightly longer shelf life. Home economics enthusiasts who treat a kitchen as a system rather than a collection of separate recipes will recognize this immediately as the kind of trick that eliminates waste and improves two different dishes at the same time. The water looks almost milky when the rice has been cooking for a while, faintly opaque and slightly thickened even before anything else is added to it. Most people pour it down the drain without a second thought, never realizing that the best thickener in the kitchen was leaving through the sink every single time they made rice. Number 15. Arroz con pollo. One pan, no waste. Chicken pieces, browned in a pan and set aside. The fat left behind used to toast the raw rice in the same pan before broth and tomato go in, and everything cooks together until the rice is tender and the chicken is falling off the bone. This one-pan method came north through American kitchens, with families from Puerto Rico, Cuba, and across Latin America, each household carrying their own version of the same basic approach, and none of them wasting a single drop of the fat the chicken left behind. American diaspora viewers who grew up eating this at a family table still remember the smell of chicken fat toasting the rice before the liquid went in, sharp and savory and immediately recognizable. A restaurant version of this dish costs several times more per plate and rarely matches what a single pan at home produces in 45 minutes. Number 14. Rice and powdered milk porridge. Powdered milk mixed back into liquid and simmered with cooked rice, a spoonful of sugar, and a pinch of cinnamon until the whole pot turns thick and warm and slightly sweet. This was breakfast and dinner and comfort food simultaneously in households where fresh dairy was expensive, unreliable, or simply unavailable across a long stretch of a hard month. Cost-conscious viewers feeding a family on a tight budget will find this in their weekly rotation within days of trying it once, because it costs almost nothing per serving and delivers genuine warmth in a bowl. The cinnamon blooms into the warm milk as the pot simmers, filling a kitchen with something that smells like a bakery, even though the ingredients barely register on a grocery receipt. A tin of powdered milk costs very little and makes this dish possible every single morning for weeks. Number 13. The 4-day rice pot. One pot of rice, made on Sunday, feeds a household across 4 completely different meals without anyone touching the stove for a second cook from scratch. Sunday night it comes hot as a side dish. Monday, it goes into a fried rice skillet. Tuesday, the last of it stretches into a porridge with a little milk and sugar. Wednesday, whatever remains, goes into a soup pot with whatever broth is on hand and disappears into something warm and new. One pot, 4 nights, almost nothing wasted. Solo seniors who want to cook once and eat well across an entire stretch of the week need this system specifically, not just the recipe. It was less a cooking technique than a weekly survival plan, the kind grandmothers ran without ever writing down, because the logic of it was simply how a careful kitchen worked. Here is what the instant rice industry never wanted you to figure out. It's a vinegar and a pinch of black pepper, eaten warm from a single bowl without ceremony or apology. This combination fed fishing families and coastal workers from Maine to the Gulf Coast for generations, built from 2 pantry staples that together more protein and more flavor than either one managed separately. Family heritage viewers with roots in coastal communities will recognize this immediately as the kind of dinner that appeared on a weeknight without anyone calling it a recipe, simply what was there and what worked. The vinegar cuts through the richness of the sardine and brightens the whole bowl in a way that transforms plain rice into something that actually tastes good. Most people dismiss canned sardines without ever giving them a serious chance over a bowl of properly seasoned rice. Number 11. Rice cakes from yesterday's pot. Leftover rice, packed firmly into small rounds and fried in a hot oiled pan until both sides turn deeply golden and the outside crisps into a shell while the inside stays soft and slightly chewy. These rice cakes curious younger kitchens across the country as a recent food trend, but they have a staple of frugal home cooking across Korean American, Japanese American, and Southern households for generations. Curious Gen X viewers who remember a parent or grandparent frying leftover rice into something entirely different from what appeared at dinner the night will find this familiar immediately. The sound of the rice hitting a hot oiled pan is immediate and sharp, a sizzle that sets a steady crackle as the bottom sets into a crust worth eating on its own. Number 10. Rice and gravy. Nothing else needed. Leftover pan drippings, stretched with a little flour and water into a thin gravy, poured warm over a bowl of white rice until the gravy soaks into the top layer. It stays fluffy enough to absorb it slowly as you eat. This was Sunday dinner across much of the rural South for generations. The dish that appeared after the roast came out of the oven, and the pan still had something worth using left in it. Nostalgic boomers who grew up in households where pan drippings were never wasted will recognize this combination as one of the most satisfying things a bowl of plain rice is capable of becoming. The gravy carries flavor from whatever cooked in that pan, smoky and savory and rich in a way no store-bought version ever replicates, no matter what the label promises. Number 9. Stuffed pepper with rice and canned tomato. A bell pepper, halved and seeded, packed with rice, mixed with a spoonful of canned tomato and whatever seasoning the pantry had, baked in a small dish until the pepper softens and the filling almost custardy inside the shell. This was the kind of dinner that made 1 cup of leftover rice look intentional rather than incidental, transforming a small amount of food into a complete meal, with a presentation that looked considerably more effortful than it actually was. Overwhelmed modern parents who need a weeknight dinner that looks like they tried without demanding an act of cooking will reach for this one repeatedly. The smell of a pepper softening in the oven while the tomato rice filling warms inside it is specific and homey. The kind of thing that makes a kitchen like someone was genuinely paying attention that evening. Number 8. Rice and evaporated milk dessert. A can of evaporated milk poured over warm cooked rice with a spoonful of sugar and a pinch of vanilla if you had it served warm in a bowl, as dessert, or as the only course on a night when dinner needed to filling and a little comforting at the same time. Evaporated milk does something to warm rice no other dairy product quite replicates, thickening into the grains as it heats and turning the whole bowl slightly golden at the edges, cream ever tipping into cloying. Sentimental grandchildren who remember this from a kitchen that produced it from seemingly nothing still describe it as one of the most comforting things they have ever eaten, not because it was fancy, but because it appeared exactly when it was needed. A can of evaporated milk costs very little and delivers considerably more than it suggests. Number 7. Sharecropper molasses. Plain cooked rice, a spoonful of dark molasses drizzled over the top, eaten warm as the last meal of a long day, when almost nothing else was left in the kitchen. This was not poverty, dressed up as comfort. It was comfort without apology. The kind of meal that asked nothing of the person eating it except a bowl and a spoon, and the knowledge that molasses over warm rice is a genuinely satisfying thing to eat when nothing else is available. Family heritage viewers tracing their roots back to sharecropper families across the Mississippi Delta will find this entry in their family's history, whether or not anyone ever wrote it down. The molasses turns slightly warm and thin rice, spreading through the grains in a way that makes the whole bowl smell like brown sugar and something earthy underneath. Number 6. Rice and wild onion wild onion foraged backyard, or a field edge, sliced thin and fried in a little fat until it softens and turns slightly. Then cooked rice stirred straight into the pan until everything is hot and the onion flavored itself through every grain. This was not a recipe from any cookbook. It was what happened when a working-class family knew their land well enough to treat it as a second pantry. Grew free alongside the road rather than paying for what sat packaged in a store. The smell of wild onion cooking in hot fat is sharper and more alive than anything from a bag, specific and slightly grassy in a way cultivated onion rarely manages. Most people today walk past wild onion without recognizing it, which means they walk past a free ingredient every time the season is. Research from nutrition scientists studying long-lived populations across Asia, the American South, and America consistently points toward a common thread. White rice eaten as the base of a varied vegetable-rich diet does not cause the metabolic problems the modern wellness industry attributes to it. The grain never the problem. What changed was what got stripped away around it, and what got added in the form of processed substitutes. Grandmothers who built a week of dinners around a pot of rice making a nutritional compromise. They were following one of the oldest and most validated eating patterns on Earth. Number 5. Rice soup stretched 3 ways. Made by simmering a small handful of cooked rice in a pot of salted water or broth until the grains soften and begin to release their starch into the liquid, turns into 3 entirely different dinners, depending on what goes into the bowl alongside it. Plain, with just salt and a little fat stirred in, it feeds a soul senior on a quiet evening without demanding anything. With a beaten egg stirred in at the end, it becomes a light egg drop style soup that's almost nothing. With a spoonful of leftover vegetable or meat added, it becomes a complete bowl that could pass for something considerably more intentional. Solo seniors who want one pot of soup to carry them through several different meals without eating twice need this specific technique in their weekly rotation. Number 4. In-camp rice bowl. During World War II, Japanese American families were forced from their homes and held in internment camps across the American West. At Manzanar and Tule Lake, dozen other sites, rice was often the most reliable food available, and families cooked it for small additions they could access. Pickled vegetables, a piece of dried fish, whatever the mess hall provided that day. They made something dignified out of almost nothing, not because they had no other choice, but because dignity at the table were things that could not be taken from them. This entry is no recipe. It is a reminder that a bowl of rice has carried humanity through some of the worst circumstances this country has produced, and that the people who ate it in those camps deserve to be remembered every time someone fills that pot. Number 3. The plain rice plate. A bowl of white rice, cooked properly, seasoned with nothing but salt. No sauce, no protein alongside it, no vegetable stir, nothing to dress it up or apologize for its simplicity. A cost-conscious viewer, eating alone tonight, when the budget left almost no room, should know that plain rice cooked well is not a failure of a dinner. It is a command. The grain itself has stained entire civilizations for centuries without apology. And a bowl that properly seasoned still delivers genuine satisfaction that no amount of marketing for more expensive alternatives ever honestly disproved. Your grandmother ate plain rice on hard weeks, without calling it deprivation, without eating it as a lesser meal, without needing anyone else to validate what she already knew. It was enough. Is. Number 2. Bowl rice supper. One bowl, one spoon, one quiet eve that does not need to explain itself. Warm the rice through, season it properly, add whatever the pantry offers, slowly at a table set for one. Solo. Seniors living alone today often feel that a real dinner requires more than this, more components, effort, more proof that the meal was worth making at all. It never did. A grandmother, eating alone on a Wednesday night, never treated a single bowl of rice as a lesser dinner. She treated it as enough because it was enough. And because feeding yourself with care and intention is exactly the same act whether the table seats one person or 10. The steam rising off one bowl still counts. Every time before tonight, it will keep counting long after anyone stops questioning whether a simple bowl was ever really worth it. Number 1. The 50-pound bag. The original foundation. A 50-pound bag of rice against a wall somewhere in the rural South or on the West Coast or in a low-country farmhouse was not a backup plan. It was the plan. It meant the family was covered. It else happened that week. Whatever the harvest brought, or the paycheck missed, or the weather delivered, there was a found in that kitchen that nothing could easily take away. Every entry on this list came from that bag. Every stretched meal, every fried leftover, every and porridge and skillet dinner was built on the same foundation that grandmother understood before any nation label ever tried to explain it. Rice has fed more people through more hardship across more of this country's history than almost any other single ingredient. Keep the bag full, it can do. She always did. Pick 3 from this list and try them this week. Start with number 24, number 13, and number 1, because together they teach you the system without needing the full countdown twice. I made the 4-day rice pot myself before writing this, expecting to get bored of it by Wednesday, and found myself looking forward to each version more than the last. Tell me below which rice dish your own family made that never appeared in any cookbook by name if it had one. The rice pot was never the humble option. It was the foundation, built by people who understood that knowing what to do with one simple grain meant you were never truly without a meal. She knew that. Now you do too. What did your grandmother do with leftover rice that nobody else in your family remembers? Subscribe now, and this list will be waiting.